feel calm and to keep a cool head as far as it is possible in these drastic times and in this awful situation that we are all in. At the moment, Ukraine is doing all it can. We are fighting back with all that we have. But I am afraid that this will not be enough, and we need the utmost support from all Western allies, from all NATO allies, from the EU, from the States, from Canada, to come together to stand for Ukraine, not just with more robust sanctions, but also with military presence here on the ground. We need an emergency resolution of the UN General Assembly, not of the Security Council, because we have a veto power of Russia, the biggest aggressor state in the world there. But it is possible to go by the same example as was done in 1950 during the Korea War, where the General Assembly made the decision to introduce UN peacekeepers. And the same should be done now for Ukraine. Ukraine cannot withstand the largest army in Europe on its own.
Are you confident you'll get the support you need? We've seen in one Western capital after another this morning statements of support, statements that more sanctions will be imposed. Do you sense that the world is standing behind Ukraine now?
The support, the political support, is always there and has always been there. It is great to receive messages from friends and colleagues from all around the world, as well as to see the Twitter hashtags and the tweets and the very different political statements from governments and parliaments from all over. But again, this is great. We are grateful for that. We are thankful for that. But it is not enough. We need a robust stance against the totalitarian, aggressive power. We need to stop it now, and we need to stand together with Ukraine for democracy and security in the world.
I'm sure that your phone has not stopped ever since we heard the first explosions here. You're being contacted by fellow parliamentarians, by friends, by family. We hear both people fleeing, but also people going to work. How would you describe the rhythm of the city now?
The thing is, I have been in Parliament since around 7 a.m. this morning. I haven't been up yet, so I don't even know what the rhythm of the city is like, because we've been in and out of meetings, in and out of votes, and we are on standby as we are waiting for the decree of the president on the full mobilization of the Ukrainian people, because this is something else that we will need to vote on soon.
Lesia Vasylenko speaking to me earlier. Well, let's cross to Moscow now. We're getting more details from Russian officials about what they call special military operations now unfolding across Ukraine. We're getting reports from our colleagues on the ground of heavy fighting in the direction of the city of Kharkiv, and as well as heavy fighting in the city itself. We can speak to Sergei Goryashko from the BBC Russian service. Sergei, why don't you just update us what the latest is coming out of Moscow right now?
Well, Moscow is claiming that the military is coming forward to the Ukrainian borders, that military is still destroying military infrastructure of the Ukraine. They are denying that they are carrying missile attacks on the cities or on the residential areas, but the reports from the towns near Kharkiv show that that's untrue, because there were already photos and videos of homes which were destroyed by the missile attacks, and of dead people there as well.
And do we have any sense of where this is heading? If you look at the military formations on the ground, where the Russian forces and heavy armor is moving?
The Russian forces are moving forward to the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, and there were already reports of the missile attacks on the grounds near Kiev. If we come to the Putin statement that his aim is the demilitarization and denazification of the Ukraine, that effectively means that probably the troops could either isolate Kiev, either enter in the city itself, because Putin also warned that the Russian military is going to make arrests of those Ukrainian officials who are responsible for the so-called, as he had called it, genocide of people in Donetsk and Lugansk regions.
And we also heard that, if necessary, forces from Belarus could join in. Is there any sense that that is a likely development?
That is correct. Belarusian government confirmed that, and now Russian troops are coming through the Belarusian and Ukrainian border, but there is still a probability that Belarusian forces will join. But in the meantime, there are only reports of Russian army and Russian military, and it is. I don't think that that will be the likely option to Belarusians to join now. Only in case, probably, if Russian forces will be fighting severely and will have heavy losses. Well, in this case, a joint operation with Belarusian forces is a possibility.
Sergei, as we're speaking, I'm looking at the readouts of the call that was with journalists with the Kremlin, and there was a question being asked: what happens after the military operation, not intending to occupy Ukraine? To which the answer was, no one's talking about occupation. Do we know what the scenario would be?
Well, if we, that is correct that Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has told journalists that, but at the meantime, if we are keeping in mind Putin's statement about the denazification of Ukraine, that could effectively mean that Russia would probably try installing pro-Russian government in Ukraine, or will be trying to hold elections there. It's also a possibility. So it's likely that Russia will not occupy the other regions apart from Lugansk and Donetsk, but it could still interfere in the positions and the government of the Ukraine if they are talking about denazification like that and demilitarization like that. There were already reports from a Belarusian president that he's keeping the option to gather in Minsk Ukrainian leaders and Russian leaders to hold peace talks, but there were no developments on that anymore for now. So it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen with the Ukrainian government in the upcoming hours or days, but what we know for sure that Russian military is destroying Ukrainian military infrastructure and probably will make them surrender.
Ooh, stark times. Sergei, thank you very much for bringing us the latest from Moscow and where this seems to be heading. You know, as we've been reporting, what's happening now, this invasion of Ukraine from several directions, is being described as a special military operations, as the demilitarization, the denazification of Ukraine. We just heard from our colleague in Russia saying that Russian military formations, there's heavy fighting in some parts of Ukraine, and that they seem to be heading in the direction of the capital, Kiev, where we're now reporting on all the latest military developments and also the diplomatic developments right around the world as the world wakes up to this Russian attack on Ukraine. Well, let's bring in our Ukraine correspondent, James Waterhouse. James, I know you've been looking at all the latest details and it's fast moving. Tell us what you have seen and where the heaviest fighting now seems to be.
Lisa, we're getting reports of heavy fighting in Kharkiv, to the northeast of Ukraine, 25 miles from the border. It has a population of 1.4 million people, so that will be causing a lot of concern. Officials to the south in Odessa say 18 people have been killed after a military strike on a military unit in a village on the outskirts. And this coincides with President Zelensky's speech, a world away from his previous messaging of stay calm. We haven't seen evidence of an escalation. He has just encouraged his citizens to go to the hospital to donate blood for service personnel. He's also said anyone who wants a weapon will be issued with one. And he's signed off with the now iconic "Glory to Ukraine," which so many in this city say more and more frequently these days. So we're getting more and more reports of attacks, as you say, from different directions. Meanwhile, where we're stood is more quiet than it's ever been. We can smell smoke. That's the sound of soldiers just down below there, burning paperwork. There are more regular patrols, checkpoints as a result of this state of emergency, the martial law that is now being imposed on this country.
And the explosions, there was one here. We spoke to Sarah Rainsford earlier in eastern Ukraine. She says there are still explosions there, but not much detail on what's causing the explosions, what's happening.
We understand. We just
there's another one.
Another one there. If you ask the Kremlin, they are targeting military sites. This morning, as you say, we understand that an airport was targeted outside of the city. Mid-morning, we had a much louder explosion, suggesting it was closer to the centre of the city where we are, just over the horizon there. But as you can appreciate, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what these Russian troops are targeting. But what's coinciding with airstrikes or artillery strikes are these advancing troops from the north. The reports that the border has been broken. The suggestion by Belarusian officials that they would be willing to join Russian troops. We don't yet know if they have joined, but that was long been a security concern, that there would be an advance from the north. So we're seeing a concentration of fighting to the south, to the east, to the northeast. There have been explosions reported to the southwest as well. So for Ukrainians who are trying to escape their capital city, try to get to safety, they had thought the west might be a safe bet. What is clear that this is a full-scale assault, and that enduring feature of unpredictability, not knowing what is going to happen next, goes on for Ukrainians.
We heard hours ago reports, official reports from Russia saying that they were meeting no resistance, that the Ukrainian soldiers were laying down their arms. We just heard from Sergei in Moscow saying that is what President Putin, the Russian forces are hoping to see, a surrender by the Ukrainian forces. But yet from this side, we're hearing about them putting up a fierce fight and resolved to fight against this invasion.
That's exactly right, Lise. And they've said all along, Ukrainians, that they would fight through their military. Citizens as well, ordinary people have said they would fight. We've seen pictures of troops mobilising in Mariupol to the southeast. We have reports of prolonged fighting in Luhansk and Donetsk regions, which has seen so much fighting already. That's been the heart of where this 8-year war has been so far. But as you know, what goes alongside attacks and bomb strikes also comes an exchange of words and claims. So you have the claim from the Kremlin that Ukrainians have laid down arms. That's clearly not happened. We've also had the Ukrainian forces say they've shot down 6 jets. We don't have any confirmation on that. But it is now about both countries trying to portray a strong front. What is clear is that fighting is very much happening in more and more pockets of Ukraine. The question is whether that fighting will arrive here on the capital, and whether Ukraine will be overwhelmed or not.
James Waterhouse, thank you very much for that update on what's happening on the ground. But we're going to bring you now to the press conference of Jens Stoltenberg in NATO, the NATO Secretary General.
We now have war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belonged to history. We have just finished a meeting of the North Atlantic Council to discuss the situation. The Council also addressed the request by Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania and Slovakia to hold urgent consultations under Article 4 of the Washington Treaty. This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centres. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. Despite its litany of lies, denials and disinformation, the Kremlin's intentions are clear for the world to see. Russia's leaders bear full responsibility for their reckless actions and the lives lost. NATO allies condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the strongest possible terms. It is a blatant violation of international law, an act of aggression against a sovereign, independent and peaceful country, and a serious threat to Euro-Atlantic security. We call on Russia to immediately cease its military action, withdraw its forces from Ukraine, and choose diplomacy. We fully support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and Ukraine's right to self-defense. Russia is using force to try to rewrite history and deny Ukraine its free and independent path. NATO's core task is to protect and defend all allies. There must be no room for miscalculation or misunderstanding. An attack on one will be regarded as an attack on all. This is our collective security guarantee. Today, the North Atlantic Council decided to activate our defense plans at the request of our top military commander, General Todd Walters. This is a prudent and defensive step to protect and shield allied nations during this crisis. And it will enable us to deploy capabilities and forces, including the NATO response force, to where they are needed. In response to Russia's massive military build-up, we have already strengthened our collective defense on land, at sea and in the air. In the last weeks, allies from North America and Europe have deployed thousands or more troops to the eastern part of the alliance and placed more on standby. We have over 100 jets at high alert, protecting our airspace, and more than 120 allied ships at sea from the high north to the Mediterranean. All this shows that our collective defence commitment, Article 5, is ironclad. We will continue to do whatever is necessary to shield the alliance from aggression. I have called a virtual summit of NATO leaders tomorrow to address the way forward. Russia is now facing severe costs and consequences imposed by the whole international community. The Kremlin's aim is to re-establish its sphere of influence, rip up the global rules that have kept us all safe for decades, and subvert the values that we hold dear. This is the new normal for our security. Peace cannot be taken for granted. Freedom and democracy are contested by authoritarian regimes, and strategic competition is on the rise. We must respond with renewed resolve and even stronger unity. North America and Europe together in NATO. We are an alliance of 30 democracies standing as one. We will protect our people and our values. Democracy will always prevail over autocracy. Freedom will always prevail over oppression. And then I'm ready to take your questions.
We'll go to Interfax Ukraine. Thank you, Anna. Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sommer. Secretary General, we all know that NATO will not fight for Ukraine. But don't you think it's time for NATO to build anti-Putin coalition? Thank you.
NATO stands in solidarity with Ukraine, and NATO allies are imposing severe costs on Russia for the reckless invasion of Ukraine. NATO allies, in close coordination with the European Union and other partners all over the world, are now imposing severe economic